I love you, Cleveland. And I love you, Ohio. And a very pleasant welcome to this week's version. Bonus time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network. Hi, I'm Bruce Drennan. Welcome back, producer Ryan Smith. Great to have you aboard today. We've got a lot to cover. Obviously, the Guardians still scorching hot and coming up in this next homestand. Our first confrontation with the KC Royals. That's going to be very, very intense. Almost playoff-type atmosphere, even as ridiculously still early it is in the season. Nonetheless, they're a pretty good ball club and young like us, so that'll be fun. Curtis Danburg of the Guardians front office will be joining us on the show. He's the director of communications, the vice president of the Guardians. He'll join us in the second segment, tell us about a lot of events that are coming up, fundraisers. They do such a tremendous job with fundraising. Also want to cover the passing of Bill Walton. We'll do that in the Ask Bruce segment where we take some of your questions. And the more you can flood us with those questions, the more you are welcome to do so. Please do so. We devote that third segment to you so you can take advantage. I've got a little bit on the WNBA, but first things first. First of all, Ryan, how you doing, pal?
I'm doing very well today, Bruce.
I want to talk about the Bickerstaff firing because that occurred since we recorded our last show. And for fear of reiterating, if you've heard this before, some of you, we get new viewers all the time. I have to do this because I think it's important for anyone who is just tuning into our show to realize what my stance has been on this. I have said all NBA season when the rumors first started flying about Bickerstaff and his status as head coach of the Cavaliers, that in the first half of the season, they didn't have Garland and they didn't have Mobley, and they ascended to the number 2 seed without those two key players. Then in the second half without Mitchell, they went down to number 4, and they could have finished number 3, but they intentionally wanted to finish 4. Then they won their first series against Orlando. Unlike a year ago when they lost in the first round to the New York Knicks, this was hard fought. It was physical. I think it exposed the Cavaliers team as not being physical enough again. But nonetheless, they won the series and did better than they did the year before. So they fire Bickerstaff. Now, I'll say this again. Unless they drastically change the roster, and how they're going to do that, you're not going to get big-name free agents to come to Cleveland, especially with the winter as bad as it is. You're just not. And even if it was, not the climate geographically located where we are, I mean, we're not Philadelphia. We're not Boston. We're not New York. We're not Chicago. Not that they have been in the limelight in many years, but you get my point as far as climate. You're not going to lure free agents to Cleveland. You couldn't do it when LeBron James was here. Shaq O'Neal and those guys were beyond their prime, way beyond. You're not going to be able to lure free agents. You don't have the draft picks because the Cavs are finishing in the playoffs now these last couple of years. So you're not going to have high draft picks to get the best top flight college players. And unlike the NFL, the NBA pool in drafting, I mean, it's a rarity when you get a boozer that is a second-round pick that becomes a real all-star. That happens, but it's a rarity. You're not going to be able to do through the draft. And then if you trade, you're trading, robbing Peter to pay Paul. So, again, unless you drastically change the roster, you could bring in Pat Riley, Red Auerbach and Phil Jackson combined, and how much better do you think this team will do with the current roster than what they did under Bickerstaff? So, I don't know if there was a point to this, except that he's the scapegoat. Coaches a lot of times are the scapegoat. Altman hired Beeline. That was a tragic mistake. And I'm not anti-Altman, as you know. If you've been watching me and listening to me on the air for years, I have been actually an advocate of Altman. He's allowed that mistake. Everybody is. Heaven knows I make a lot of mistakes in my career. Have and probably will continue to do so. But is it more than that? Is it Mitchell influencing Altman to make this decision? I don't know how much Gilbert is now reemerging a little bit after his setbacks, both physically and emotionally with the loss of his son. But if Altman is just appeasing Mitchell, if Mitchell had a problem with Bickerstaff, will you tell me where the guarantee is that Mitchell's going to stay in Cleveland for years to come? He's from New York. New York is good now. A piece like Mitchell? Are you kidding me? They could become the power of the East. And unless you drastically change the makeup of the roster of the Cleveland Cavaliers, how much better are they going to do? We were exposed with our lack of physicality against Orlando, and that's a young, aspiring team in the East. How are you drastically going to change this roster by firing this coach when you don't have the assets to improve the roster? So I'll also give you that I'm not saying that Bickerstaff didn't deserve to be second-guessed, critiqued, rotation decisions, matchup decisions, lineup decisions. That is all valid with any coach that has ever existed in the history of the NBA or any other sport or a manager in baseball. But I just don't know if this is – don't think – by firing Bickerstaff, you're going to bring whoever in, and automatically with the same roster, you're going to be able to ascend to dethrone Boston. It's not going to happen. I'm more optimistic about the Browns, and certainly more optimistic about the Guardians than I am the Cavs. I just don't see them elevating to the number one seed or winning the Eastern Conference with the makeup of this roster. I don't see it. Am I wrong, Ryan?
No, and I'll start with saying I definitely think there is a piece that Donovan Mitchell, you want to appease Donovan Mitchell because that is your 1A goal of this offseason is to get him to extend, because then you can figure out your future and you can make other moves based around that. It's really tough because you need that first domino to follow to be really confident in your plans. Now, as good as JB Bickerstaff was, and he made progress, he showed that, and he's a big part of this turnaround ever since Beeline. That can't be understated enough. And he did. He advanced, went to the play-in, went to the first round, went to the second round. So we're still in a good situation. Now, it just felt as though Kobe Altman and now Dan Gilbert, as you mentioned, who has said he's going to be a bigger part of this organization in the front office like he has in the past, they maybe felt like JB Bickerstaff was a great coach and he was a great stepping stone, but now maybe we need somebody that is able to take us to that next step. Now, your point exactly taken, because there's not many coaches in the market right now. One, with much experience. Two, I'm not sure you're going to find somebody that comes in this first year and immediately fixes some of the problems that JB Bickerstaff couldn't fix, because a lot of blame should be placed on Kobe Altman as well. I agree that JB Bickerstaff was a scapegoat to a point, but unfortunately, we know the reality of major sports. Really, coaches are the first ones to go. That's just how it goes. So now the Cavs' plan is to, one, hope Donovan Mitchell extends, and he really is that superstar that they can build around. And they're praying that Evan Mobley takes that next step to truly be that 2 to Donovan Mitchell's 1. And in terms of the roster, you're right. I got to imagine there's reports that it's all but likely Jared Allen's played his last game in Cleveland, as unfortunate as that is. And then you got to figure out the deal with Darius Garland, because one, what are you going to get in return if you do elect to move on from him? Because one, his contract is so large, and two, his value certainly took a hit with his play this year. He had a nightmare of a season. So now maybe if you can find a package, maybe Karis LeVert's a name that's been coming around, and just build around Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley and get some wings that they desperately needed, maybe they can make it work. But I mean, there's no coach out there that I can make a true confident claim in, Bruce, that I'm saying is going to be better than JB Bickerstaff.
You say build around. How do you build around? Are you going to get, they brought in Strus. Wings. That doesn't improve the physicality, the lack of physicality on this team. You've got to be physical in the NBA playoffs. You've just got to. The officials really let them play during the regular season, but especially in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I mean, what they're going to want to do is, unfortunately, it doesn't seem as though Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland are a great fit. Now, you make Donovan your primary ball handler. When he was the primary ball handler, he was playing out of his mind pre-All-Star before his injury. Now you get a taller point guard, because it was proven that Darius Garland at 6'1" and Donovan Mitchell at 6'2", 6'3", it didn't work in today's NBA. They don't have enough length. They're too tall, and they weren't shooting well enough in order to counter that. Now, then you look at Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. They can't really play together for some reason. They realize that maybe it's stunting Evan Mobley. So now if you can maybe get another forward that can shoot, maybe it stretches it out. I don't know. But that's their plan of attack. And I don't know. I imagine they roll with a taller point guard, and you got to get wings that can actually shoot.
Look it. Cleveland is a football city. It's a football state. The exception of Cincinnati. That's a great baseball town. But it's a football city. It's a football community. The Browns went, 1-31, and you can talk Browns on shows like this for 365 days a year. That's why I say Browns fans are the best fans in any sport, because, their love and their loyalty to the Browns is unequaled to me to any other team in the NHL, NBA, NFL, or Major League Baseball, because they've been arguably the most dysfunctional franchise in the history of sports, or certainly in the modern era. Maybe you could make an argument for Detroit, but Detroit is good now. The Guardians have got to get the monkey off their back by winning the World Series. The reason, in my opinion, that we don't have fabulous attendance, 30,000 every game, like some of these other markets, even markets our size, like Milwaukee. The reason is because we haven't won the World Series. It's been since 1948. Had we defeated the Cubs in 16, that's different. But we didn't. And the NBA, the Cavs have won the NBA championship, so that fan base is still there. But the goal is to win the ultimate championship, not just be good and make the playoffs. Do you realize how many fans are dying? The cemeteries are loaded with corpses. Cremation units have been burning themselves over. It's unbelievable how many people have passed without seeing a championship. So at least the Cavs with James won the championship. But the goal is to get back there. I don't see how they can get back there with this roster. And you're saying build around? How are you going to build around to improve this team to defeat a Boston or an upcoming Orlando the way they looked, or even Indiana, even though they were swept by Boston? I can't. You're going to have to explain it to me how they can do it without being able to get a free agent and without draft choices. How are you going to do it?
Well, that's the problem, is maybe you can get some draft picks. Well, that's the issue, Bruce, is because if you do trade Darius Garland, the likely only packages I'm looking at that you're seeing out there are draft picks, and that's the problem. You can't take that because you already gave them away. You need to win now.
And if you get draft picks, then you're putting it off 2-3 years, are you?
Exactly. They're kind of caught in the middle because you're really relying on Evan Mobley to take that next step, and I'm not ready to sit here and say that I think he's going to go out and be this Joel Embiid, this Nikola Jokic type. I think that's, one, unfair, and two, unrealistic at this point. And in terms of free agents, you're right. You're not going to go get these big names. One, because you're going to be paying Donovan Mitchell out of the wazoo. Two, Evan Mobley's going to need max extension.
They won't come here anyway, regardless of what you pay Mitchell. It doesn't matter what they pay Mitchell. You're not going to get big-name free agents to come to Cleveland. You've never been able to do that, and you're not going to be able to do it now. The way we got Kevin Love was Griff made a trade.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
James wanted him.
You're absolutely right.
So let's forget about getting big name for that. That's just not in the cards. It's not in the cards.
I wish I had an answer as to what exactly their plan of attack was, and it all falls on Donovan Mitchell's decision, and I'm not sure when we're going to get that.
Well, Donovan Mitchell only, with the current roster, only makes them a consistent playoff team that's going to get beat in the second round.
Yeah,
That's
I guess the hope is that we can, one, at the very least, be what we were last year with Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley, and then maybe we get somebody that fits better with Donovan Mitchell, somebody that fits better with Evan Mobley. And I know that's a tall task and that's a lot to ask, but unfortunately, it seems as though your big core four that you wanted to build around, it seems like as though it's not going to work. So they got some decisions to make.
Yeah, they certainly are. Kyrie Irving is now 14-1 in closeout games. Following the loss by Dallas to Minnesota's barely breathing. This is going to be over in the next game. And Dallas will then take on Boston as they are nice and healthy and awaiting with home court advantage. I can't see Dallas beating Boston, Ryan. I can't see it. The fascinating sidebar story to this is that Irving will have a revenge factor going for him to prove something to Boston, that he truly is a championship player after playing there and not being able to accomplish that. He's been there. He's done that with us first, of course. So I think that will be a fascinating sidebar story. And, of course, Luka is a tremendous talent, but I can't see them beating Boston.
I think Boston will certainly and most obviously be favored. I think they're the better team, and I think they're the deeper team. However,
even without Porzingis, I think they beat him.
Yeah, and I can listen to that. Although I'm not going to sit here and say I wouldn't be necessarily surprised if Dallas pulled it off or if they went to 7 games. I still think that Luka is hands down the best player in that series. I think you have Kyrie Irving, a proven champion who's playing some really damn good ball now. And the Mavericks, they went all in the trade deadline, and now they're feeling the riches of it. You went and got a guy like P.J. Washington. You went and got a rim protector in Daniel Gafford, and they're all meshing and playing really well, and they're playing their best basketball at the best time.
Well, they remind me a lot of the Detroit team that won it without a superstar when they had the Wallaces and that bunch, and it was a really good balanced team. Billups was on that team. They had all-stars. They didn't have a superstar, but they had a bunch of all-stars, and they remind me of them. They complement each other. They can beat you in a lot of different ways. So I think it will be an interesting series. Little sidebar on the WNBA. Indiana Fever is off to a terrible start at 1-7. That's their worst start since 21. They're in 11th place. However, Caitlin Clark, 30 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 steals, and 3 blocks in their last loss. And she is just an incredible talent that I think is saving the WNBA. I do.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, she is quite literally their savior. And it's so nice because you're learning about these other females in the league, like Cameron Brink, young Angel Reese, and you're also learning about some women that, when it wasn't as prominent, that are still very good. They're getting a chance to shine now. I really think it is a very mutual beneficial situation.
Well, the Guardians will win 13-7 after dropping that first game. Josh Naylor, third career multi-home run game. In May, Naylor was hitting only 165, but hopefully this will launch him out of that slump. 15 homers, 40 RBIs on the year. Jose is really coming about. 16 round trippers, including one in this game. 56 RBIs. He's now up to 272. David Fry, 3 for 5, 7th home run, 23 RBIs, hitting 357, my goodness. Andres Jimenez, in my opinion, is an all-star again. He really is. His defense is just off the charts. He's hitting 273. He was 2 for 4 with a couple of runs scored. And McKenzie with 9 strikeouts and 5 innings of work. People ask me all the time off the air, why do I think the Guardians are enjoying this success? And I think the explanation is there's numerous reasons for it. They are, to me, an old-fashioned, scrappy, manufacturing-run type team, more so in the old mode of a National League ball club. They're actually displaying more power than I thought that they would, which is refreshing and good. And maybe by the deadline we can pick up another bat that would even complement that power, the protection of the lineup in the middle, even more so. But they're exemplifying more power than I thought. But I love the way they run the bases. I love the way they hit singles and doubles in the clutch. And the biggest thing I love about them, even in the loss to Colorado in the first game of this series, they had the lead, they blew the lead, but they didn't give up. They came back and they almost pulled it off. They're a scrappy bunch, and they're young, and they believe in one another, and they don't even have Quan.
Yeah.
And they haven't had Bieber, and they haven't had Gavin Williams. And the bullpen is excellent. You can make an argument it's the best bullpen in the major leagues so far this year. Certainly top 3.
Yeah, I don't even necessarily. I think the stats will tell you, Bruce. It's not even an argument at this point. The bullpen has been historically great, and it's been needed because it's been an anomaly for our starting pitchers this year to go 7 innings. So you're asking consistently every day of the week for your bullpen. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's such a nice break for your starters to know you go out, you give 6 solid innings, and you can rely on the next 4 innings to be shut down baseball. It is absolutely huge, and it's what the Guardians need right now.
Historically, Sparky Anderson, when he was manager of the Big Red Machine, only needed to start. He didn't have a good starting rotation. Billingham, Nolan, Grimsley, Gullett, they weren't a great starting rotation. Not even close to the best in the National League. But all he needed was 5 innings. And he turned it over to that bullpen with Clay Carroll, Bourbon, McEnany, Eastwick. That's what he did. Same thing with the Indians in 95. We didn't have a great starting rotation. Oral Hershiser was over the hill, but still effective. El Presidente, Martinez, same thing. You had Nagy, who was a third starter. He was at best a third starter in a rotation on any big league team. Some rotations 4. We didn't have a great starting rotation, but we had a fabulous bullpen. Assenmacher, Plunk, Tavares, and Jose.
And now, in this season particularly, you have Emmanuel Clase to put the bow on the thing, who has been absolutely lights out and is hands down the best closer in baseball.
And I'm not saying that we don't have a good starting rotation, because I've liked Logan Allen since he came up. I think he has the potential to be a Jamie Moyer, Jim Cott type crafty lefty, and he's showing it. Also, keeps you in the game. That's all you need. Keep them in the game till that 5th, 6th inning. And then certainly Lively has been a fantastic, pleasant surprise addition. Obviously, Bybee, not pitching like he did a year ago, but he doesn't have to. And certainly, I like McKenzie showing signs of coming out of it with 9 strikeouts in 5 innings. That's very encouraging. But without Bieber and without Gavin Williams. So they're a fun team, and I think they're going to be in it all the way. And they've won 10 out of 11. We have the best record in the American League at 37-18. We got a 3.5 game lead over Kansas City, who comes to town. We're going to talk to Curtis about that coming up. And second best record in the entire major leagues. Only Philadelphia has a slightly better record at 38-18. We're 37-18. Half game.
It's been absolutely incredible, Bruce. And as you mentioned, they've been doing this without Stephen Kwan for the last month. I can't wait to get him back, but it's been so impressive. And I don't know what more the Guardians need to do to prove that they are contenders right now. Yeah. So come this trade deadline, we have to get a starting pitcher. As much as comfortable as I am with our bullpen, when we get deep in September, we're playing October, we're going to need an ace, and not even necessarily an ace, but we need another starting caliber pitcher for this team, and I really think that's the only missing piece.
And taking a look at the other divisions, the Yankees and Baltimore, I think all the way will be nip and tuck. AL West is amazingly close, considering the leader, Seattle, is only 4 games above the 500 mark. Houston's only 5.5 back, and they've had a very dismal first half so far. National League, obviously, Philadelphia's built up a 5-game lead. And how about the news for Atlanta losing Acuna? Oh, my. What a severe blow to them. Although when they won the World Series, they didn't have him.
I did. That's impressive.
So the Central, I think, is interesting with Milwaukee and the Cubs because of the Craig Counsell flip-flop. And St. Louis is there. I knew St. Louis wouldn't have 2 horrible years in a row. Not that they're anything to brag about so far, but they're there. NL West, it's the Dodgers, I think, all the way. San Diego, I don't see it. Bogarts just got hurt. Looks like he's going to be out for quite a while. Angel Hernandez has retired, probably before he was fired. 30 years, though, in the big leagues, he survived. His actual critique numbers that Major League Baseball, in their critiquing of umpires, he's only slightly below average, although he's had a reputation for decades now as the worst umpire ever, and certainly in that era of Major League Baseball. So there you have it. Curtis Danburg's going to join us here in a minute. We'll take a break. We'll come back with Curtis. We'll talk about the Guardians' upcoming series, events, charity fundraisers, all that good stuff. That's next on Bonus Time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network. Now here is the risk that the Browns had to take with Great to have you back. Bonus Time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network. As I mentioned, Vice President of Communications and Community Impact, Curtis Danburg, is joining us now in this segment for the Cleveland Guardians front office. And I want to tell you, Curtis, I'm a little peeved off at you. I'm really disappointed that you've made the effort. I'll give you credit. You made the effort to come to our beautiful studios here in person. But where's Slider?
I know. It's a great – yes, that's on me. Slider's hibernating with the team on the road and resting up for the homestand.
And what a homestand it's going to be. But before we get to that, Curtis, I led into this segment by talking about our team. And I'm not flabbergasted. I'm pleasantly surprised in a few areas, like the power we've displayed. I didn't think we would have this kind of power that we've had this year. But I'm not flabbergasted by this team and what they've accomplished so far, because I saw this potential. This is an old-fashioned National League-style team, in my opinion. They scrap and they scrape and they manufacture runs and they run the bases well and they play great defense, and the pitching's off the chart.
Yeah, and especially the back end of the bullpen. I mean, that's been the anchor. We've had our challenges with the rotation. Obviously, you lose Shane Bieber to start the season, but, having a guy step up and fill those gaps. But I think the biggest difference between last year and this year is just that power. You mentioned it, to finish dead last in power last year in homers, and to be ranked in the top 10 now. That's a pretty big jump from year to year, and that came from Stephen Vogt and his coaching staff saying we need to be more aggressive in the count, early in the count. If you have a count in your favor, take advantage. Take that swing and go for it, and that's paid off.
He's replacing Vogt. Is replacing a future Hall of Fame manager in Francona.
Absolutely.
And so that's not an easy thing to do. I mean, look at how many coaches UCLA went through after John Wooden retired. I mean, you can go example after example in cases like that. And so it's not an easy thing to do. But had we not hired him, a lot of other clubs, I understand, were interested in hiring him, Curtis.
We acted fast. And, we went through a bunch of interviews. When Steven came through, it was clear that he has a lot of the same characteristics that made Tito special. His ability to connect with people and to connect with every person, whether you're the star on the team or the 26th man on the roster, that's a separator. And that's what made Tito special, creating that culture. We saw that with Steven, early in camp. They're doing slip and slide, out there on the back agility field. And, that builds that camaraderie and builds that team unity. And we have to be a team. And time and time again, you hear any interview, they're talking about how it's a family and everybody has each other's back. And then that's what's making this season pretty special.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said about his youth.
Yeah.
It seems to be a trend now in the majors.
Yeah, I mean, 2 years away from being on the field. Again, about that connection, he knows which buttons to push with the younger generation of the players, and he's brought in energy, and that's been a separator, no question.
Yeah, and if you look, Boschi's up there in years now, but they're far and few between when you look at all the managers in the major leagues. So I think there's something to be said about being able to relate to this new generation of players, and we're still a very young team. I said all offseason, the biggest key for the Guardians in the offseason was retaining Carl Willis. And the reason I say that, Curtis, is because regardless of Vogt being a catcher, and catchers traditionally have made the best managers, and regardless of Vogt would have been hired by somebody else had we not grabbed him, the potential was obvious, but he's still a rookie manager.
Yep.
And the manipulation in this modern era of baseball with pitch counts and how many innings these relievers have worked the previous day or that week or in this series is so vitally important, and I think underrated by a casual fan that doesn't understand it. This is so vitally important to have him standing right next to Vogt when you get to that 4th, 5th, 6th inning. And what a key in retaining Carl Willis, who's one of the best pitching coaches in the major leagues, no question.
Yeah, pitching's been the bread and butter of our organization. So to lean in on that, and I think that's one of the cool characteristics of Steven from day one. He knew what he had in Carl Willis and that pitching group, and he is always so complimentary of everybody. He's in complimentary of Tito. The comment he's provided, gave this to Hammy, was that he inherited a mansion. He just decided to change the paint color on a few rooms. And to have a guy like Carl Willis at his side to kind of lead that pitching group, that's a tremendous help for him. And Steven from the get-go, like I said, has really been complimentary and thankful that he has someone like Carl to anchor that rotation.
I like the fact that he's not a carbon copy of Francona in some ways, too. He's not cemented in stone with the same lineup every single day. He's experimented. He's moved some guys from the 2-hole down a little bit. And now, of course, we're settled into the season. You're not seeing it as much. But I like the fact that he's his own man in that regard, too.
Yeah, and he said he's going to bring his own flair, and it's his own person. And Tito told him that from the get-go. He's like, I want you to be Steven Vogt. If I'm here for you, if you need me, but take it and run with it. And that's what Steven's done from the, look at start of spring training through this season. He's keeping guys loose. He's keeping guys fresh. Everybody's playing. Yeah. He's rotating guys in. So that bench, and this goes back to him. He was an two-time All-Star, but he was also the 26th man on a roster at various times in his career. He knows which buttons to push and to keep those guys that are on the bench fresh.
Outside of Jose, Fry, Jimenez, even Naylor's batting average leaves a lot to be desired, although it was certainly encouraging to see him bust out last night after a struggling May. But you look, we've got the second best record in the entire major leagues, best record in the American League. And you look at the rest of the batting averages. I mean, I remember, when we were younger, Curtis, these first place teams and these contenders, 300, 315, 310, 290. Our batting averages aren't even close, and we've got the second best record in the entire major leagues. It's amazing.
This is where, Bruce, you don't ask questions, you just enjoy it. You enjoy the ride, and finding ways to win. And we talked at the outset that bullpen has been such an anchor to the team, and so we've seen the performance on the offensive side, but having Clase, he's historic season thus far. So, keeping that bullpen healthy, bringing these young arms, and they're still coming. We just promoted Andrew Walters from young arm that we drafted last year from AA to AAA yesterday. So that's happening. So, I mean, these arms in the bullpen have been really a catalyst.
Oh, yeah. Arguably the best bullpen in the major league. Statistically, it is. Clase, I remember when we acquired him, he came right out and said right from the get-go he wanted to be a closer and be the best closer in the majors. And the argument now is that he is.
And he still, he had all those saves last year, but he had a lot of those blown saves.
Right.
And that really ate at him all offseason. And he came in raring to go and wants that ball, and he has not let up from day one.
You mentioned the rotation. So unfortunate about Bieber. My goodness. I can't believe it. He looked like his Cy Young. Oh, my God. He looked like his Cy Young year. And then we haven't had Gavin Williams all season long. Think of how promising he showed us last year. But Quan was leading the American League in hitting. We lose him for weeks, although he's close to coming back. Is he not, Curtis?
Yes, he's now in rehab in Columbus, and hopefully everything goes well. We'll see him this weekend. We have his jersey giveaway on Saturday, so he's got to be up with the big club for his big jersey giveaway. Good.
I am so excited about this upcoming homestand because when we get done with Colorado here, we come home and we host the Washington Nationals over the weekend. Curtis mentioned we got the Quan bobblehead day. But then Kansas City comes to town. And that's our first games with the Royals. And they're an improved ball club. I think they're for real, Curtis. And they're an improved ball club. They've got a good young team like us. Their pitching has been very, very good. And they got a guy by the name of Bobby Witt. And that'll be our first confrontation with them. That's very exciting. How are ticket sales going for that series?
Ticket sales are moving. We're great this weekend. Obviously, with Washington, we got all the promotions. But I hope people are paying attention to the Royals on the calendar. And that's going to be an important series. 2-night games. And then we'll play at day game on that last game of that series. So they are off to a historic start, best start in their history, and they still haven't been able to catch us. So it's going to be. I know they've had that series circle on their calendar, and we have too. But we can't lose sight of getting the job done in Colorado and taking advantage of the Nationals being in town with a big weekend. But that Royal Series is something.
Yeah, coming up also then later this month will be Seattle and Toronto. And then in July, the Chicago White Sox, San Francisco. So a lot of great homestands coming up. Talk about those.
Well, first, the one that I've marked on my calendar all year long is June 22nd. We've got a Josh Naylor bobblehead, but post-game concert, or post-game performance, I should say, with Shaquille O'Neal. DJ Diesel's going to perform after the game. He's going to mix some music and then probably do some rapping and have a lot of fun. So that's not only a big marquee date and game on a weekend like that, but to have those promotions and have that post-game entertainment will be a lot of fun. But, yeah, a huge slate of promotions all season long and summer long. Be sure to go to cleguardians.com and check that out.
And, of course, fireworks displays are second to one. The old Indians, now the Guardians, are second to anybody putting on fireworks displays. You got quite a few left.
Especially Rock and Blast. We've talked about Rock and Blast for years, Bruce, and that's mid-August. We take that a fireworks show to a whole different level, and it really runs for almost 20-plus minutes, and it's like a grand finale throughout, all synchronized to music and synchronized to graphics on the scoreboard. So certainly a summer highlight at Progressive Field.
Curtis, I want you to comment on Cleveland Guardians charities. The biggest fundraiser is the golf outing, which is coming up in August, I believe,
August
this year.
29th.
I talked to Bobby D. I'll be there as always, so I'm looking forward to it out at Quail Hollow. But that money is raised by the money that was raised by the Cleveland Guardians is thrown right back into the community. Comment on that.
Yeah, so our mission is to prepare youth for success, and we do that supporting the Boys and Girls Club of Northeast Ohio. We do that by completely funding the baseball and softball programs for the Cleveland Metropolitan School District. We just had the baseball Senate League Championship yesterday. Rhodes defeated Lincoln West, so completely outfitting and allowing them to continue to play those games. And then the RBI program, we brought that in-house and have taken it to a whole different level. But again, it's about those kids on the field and off the field and preparing them, like I said, for success in the future.
Let me ask you this, because one of my pet peeves, baseball being my favorite sport, is that the best African-American athletes are playing football and basketball, not necessarily baseball. But the Indians, now Guardians, have poured money into the inner city to develop these programs for the little leaguers on up. How is that growing? How is the participation?
Participation, it is, and we're trying to get more diverse. It's an MLB initiative, and really it is about that RBI program. And not only that, we created a couple years ago Play Ball CLE. We wanted to get our arms around all those inner city independent leagues in Cleveland and trying to grow that game, and we're supporting them financially and with a lot of coaching training and other resources, again, to grow that game throughout our city, but really target those diverse populations. Also,
part of that is sending some of our African-American players to the inner city to speak to these kids and motivate them.
Yeah, that's one of the best things we do is identify, and Megan Ganser in our Community Impact Department does a phenomenal job, meets with the players and see what do they want to do the most. Where are their passions from a community standpoint. Stephen Kwan goes and plays chess with a CMSD team. But a lot of our players obviously want to give back to youth baseball and softball. And Josh Naylor being an ambassador is a great example of, he was tracking the girls softball team that were, traveled to the World Series last year and sending them video messages and firing them up and having them out to the ballpark and interacting with them. That's what, creating that bond makes it pretty special for the kids especially. But not to say that the players love doing it too.
Is Quan the best chess player on the team?
He's pretty good. Yeah. We had the online chess tournament from Goodyear this year, and he won it all. And
I heard Austin Hedges is pretty good.
Austin Hedges, he had a couple beers in tow as he was playing chess. I don't think chess.com had ever seen a chess tournament like that, and Austin's personality certainly came out in that. But Steven's definitely the champion. Tristan McKenzie, very good as well and plays. And it's that they do it all the time playing, but creating that connection. And they not only do it in person, but they play on chess.com and online and keep that relationship.
They play in the clubhouse during rain delays?
Oh, yeah. They're playing all the time.
Wow, that's great. Well, everywhere I go, people are asking me about the Guardians, what's making them so good, will they last? So enthusiasm is up, and I hope it reflects on ticket sales. Give the plug on how the fans can get those tickets, gobble them up, because we got a lot of season left, Curtis.
Well, hey, tickets are trending well. We're already probably in the upper 20s, pushing 28, 29 for Friday night. Saturday's looking strong, 4-10 game. But we just had our second sellout of the season this past homestand. It was our first May sellout since 2011. So the demand is high. We were ranked second in Major League Baseball last year in overall growth in attendance, and we're already fifth this year, building on last year's success. So it's the place to be. Well, obviously, we haven't even talked about our renovations. We have a whole new terrace garden up there in the upper deck and left field, another standing room only spot. That $49 ballpark pass has been a huge boom to our success from an attendance standpoint. So a lot of opportunities. Our Paul Davis Pennant District, the new group space. We're up in groups. We're probably going to have a historic group season this year. Think about this. We used to have the circus tent outside the ballpark on Carnegie Avenue, was where our groups were. Now we have them inside the ballpark in this beautiful space up there in the upper deck. So a lot of positive things are happening. City Connect has brought a lot of excitement to our team store, which is now on the Gateway Plaza because of the construction. But our players, they want to wear that every game. They wanted to take it on the road. It's like, no, we can't take it on the road. That's just for home only. But so a lot of great things happening at the corner of Carnegie.
I'm glad you brought that up before I let you go, the renovations, because this stadium was built, it opened in 1994. And indeed, throughout the years, you look, Brown Stadium isn't that old. And you look at other stadiums around my goodness, Atlanta, all over the country. You look at these stadiums that cities are building new stadiums, but we haven't had to do that in Cleveland because the Indians, now Guardians, have made these renovations to modernize this facility and keep it up with the other facilities in the major leagues. And I don't know how many renovations you've gone through since '94, Curtis, but it's amazing how you've kept up with the times.
You have to. We did those big renovations in 15 and 16 and built the corner bar and changed the center field and the bullpens. But this, over $200 million of renovations for over a 2-year span. And first phase is done. We're working pretty much as soon as the team leaves. They begin the construction in the Terrace Club. And, as soon as the last out, which hopefully is in November, they'll get working in the clubhouse and the new dugout club. And there's a lot of positive things happening. But it was so important to us to extend our lease, at least 15 years, could go up to 25 years, but it's such a jewel of our city and in the Major League Baseball progressive field, and maintaining that and enhancing that was a focus of ours. And thankfully, with the support of the state and the city and the county, we're able to extend our lease and keep us there and keep us competitive.
Go Guards. Curtis brought us these hats. I'm going to wear mine proudly on the golf course. You better believe it. Everywhere I go, and I play all over the state of Ohio. So thank you, Curtis. Appreciate it.
You got it. Go
Appreciate
Guards.
it, buddy. And the next time, you better bring Slider.
I apologize.
Okay. Curtis Danburg of the Guardians front office. The Ask Bruce segment is next on Bonus Time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network. Now here is the risk that Brown had to take with Great to have you back. Bonus Time with Drennan and the Big Play Sports Network. We are, before we begin our Ask Bruce segment, next week, my special guest is going to be a gentleman by the name of Denny Kuntz. He's a Youngstown man who is retired now, become a very good friend. All the events I do, I MC several events at the Lake Club out there in Poland, Ohio, outside of Youngstown and Boardman. And he's a member there. He has a home right on the course, on the lake. Denny is retired, and he used to own a productions company. And what that is, the trucks, the television trucks that go all over the country and enable us to see all these tremendous events. His trucks, especially concentrated on the PGA Tour, including the Masters. So all those telecasts that you've watched over the years were his trucks producing those games. Super Bowl, NFL season, college football, big time, the NBA, the NHL, Major League Baseball. He has met so many stars in all these different sports, established relationships with all these different individuals from all these different sports from his company, which serviced their respective sport and events over all the decades. So I hooked up with Denny down in Florida when I was there this winter, and we played golf at his club, and I said to him, Denny, I think you'd make a fascinating guest with all these stories you've got about these famous guys, Jack Nicklaus, and going on and on and on. I won't even begin. You don't want to miss next week's show. Denny Kuntz, who is responsible for you seeing all of these events all of these years. That's on next week's show. And then the week after, we'll be previewing the U.S. Open, my favorite of the four majors. It will be the third of the four majors now that we've completed the Masters and the PGA, with Schauffele finally winning his first major. And the U.S. Open this year is going to be at Pinehurst #2, a tremendous golf course. Wyndham Clark is the defending champion. Didn't even make a cut at the PGA. So we'll have Mike Yeager, the head golf professional at my club, Columbia Hills Country Club, to preview the upcoming U.S. Open. That'll be exciting. All right, before we get to the Ask Bruce segment, I want to acknowledge one of the greatest of all time in any sport, and that's the passing of Bill Walton. Walton was 71 years old, died the other day of cancer, complications with cancer. And, of course, he's a California kid, kind of a hippie-ish type kid when he was young. He was a Vietnam protester, a fantastic high school player. He was really recruited by Denny Crum, legendary Denny Crum. If you're not familiar with Crum, he won a couple of national championships as the head basketball coach at Louisville. But before he got the job at Louisville, the reason he got the job at Louisville was because he was an assistant to John Wooden at UCLA. While he was an assistant at UCLA, he recruited Bill Walton. And Wooden wasn't really excited about recruiting Walton. And Crum persuaded him to recruit Walton, and boy, was Wooden glad he did. UCLA, in those years, freshmen were not eligible to play in NCAA basketball. So in his sophomore year, his freshman team went 20-0. But when he was eligible for the varsity, his sophomore season, then junior season, seniors, in those 3 years, UCLA went 86-4. The first 2 years, they won the national championship. He was named the Final Four most outstanding player twice. His 44 points against Memphis State in 1973 remains the most scored in a national championship game. He was the Naismith College Player of the Year 3 times. Only Ralph Sampson since then has equaled that feat, winning 3 times. The Bruins' 88-game winning streak is still a record, probably never to be broken. But it ended in his senior year in an upset at South Bend against Notre Dame when Digger Phelps was the coach. In that game, he was wearing a back brace because of a broken spine. UCLA lost to North Carolina State in his senior year, and a guy by the name of David Thompson in the national championship game in double overtime. And I contend the reason they lost that game is because the stall was still allowed in college basketball then. And North Carolina State played a four-corner stall against UCLA. It's the only reason they beat them. They perfected that stall and outlasted UCLA in double OT. Now we have the shot clocks, and of course it's a thing of the past. But Wooden sometimes clashed with Walton, who was kind of a renegade. As I said, he protested the Vietnam War. And Walton actually said at John Wooden's wake and funeral, he spoke, and he said, Wooden was 99 years old when he died, and Walton said, I'm probably the reason that John Wooden died at such a young age. Injuries in his first two NBA years, but in his third year, he stayed healthy. And by the way, he could have signed an ABA contract for a lot more money, but he wanted to compete against the best. So he took less money when he was drafted by Portland and signed with them. His first 2 years, he was hurt. His third year, he was healthy, and they went on to qualify for the playoffs. And they actually beat and eliminated the Los Angeles Lakers in the Western Conference playoffs. But get this, he defeated previous UCLA superstar Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in that series. Now, he had Maurice Lucas at his side in Portland, who was a tremendously gifted player as well. And that same year, when they won the Western Conference, they went on to the NBA championship, and they defeated the Philadelphia 76ers, featuring a guy by the name of Dr. Julius Erving. 1978, he was the MVP of the NBA. They were 50-10, a record. That was their record, and then he broke his foot. He returned for the playoffs, but he got re-injured himself, and that was it. That was the year after, of course. They had won the NBA championship. 1986, he found himself a member of the Boston Celtics, and he actually that year won the award for Best Sixth Man of the Year. They won the NBA championship, the Celtics did, and then he went on to an illustrious broadcasting career with NBC, CBS, ESPN, and became really quite controversial as a very, very, very tell-it-like-it-is analyst. The passing of Bill Walton, I wanted to acknowledge, Ryan, 71-year-old great, one of the greatest of all time.
Well, in honor of Bill Walton, we'll start with this question for Hey Bruce, if you're ready. It says, hey Bruce, in honor of the passing of the great Bill Walton, where does he rank amongst the all-time great college hoopers for you?
Wow. If you're strictly talking college, certainly Jabbar. I think Oscar Robertson. I rank him above Ralph Sampson. I mentioned Ralph Sampson in my tribute to Walton, but I rank him above Sampson because Sampson never won the national championship. Walton won 2 and should have won 3 if the stall was, if they had a shot clock. There's so many others. I would rank him above David Thompson. I certainly, I'm hard pressed to think of other players. I mean, those guys are right at the top. Even the other guys at UCLA, Curtis Rowe, Sidney Wicks. Sidney Wicks was the best of that team. But other greats throughout the years, the Kentucky players, obviously North Carolina, because Jordan was not as great in college as he proved to be in the pros. That's a fact. So I think he's got to rank in the top 5 at worst. At worst in the top 5 all time, maybe top 3.
Alrighty, this one comes from Andy. Says, "Hey Bruce, great news that Angel Hernandez is retiring. I remember your rant about I believe I'm pronouncing this right, Las Diaz on STO many years ago. Do you rank the aforementioned as the 2 worst umpires in MLB history?" He says, "Is there any others that I'm missing?"
A lot of people criticize Joe West. I thought Joe West was great. I interviewed him when I was on the network, and he was so entertaining and so funny. And a lot of people don't realize in the offseason, Joe West would go to Nashville and perform as a country singer. He was really a very talented guy and quite the character. Luciano was another guy that I found very entertaining throughout the years. But I think historically, unfortunately for Hernandez, he will go down as one of the worst of all time.
Bruce, I've never asked you this. We haven't talked about it. Are you pro or anti-robot umpires?
I'm definitely anti.
I'm anti as well. I like the human element.
I think I think it's inevitable. I hope it happens after my time is done. And you've heard me say I'm glad I'm on the back nine. Because yes, let's just talk about home plate. I think the replay has really helped all the calls at first, second, and third. But for the balls and strikes, players, managers, coaches all request, they strive for consistency in those balls and strikes calls, justifiably. So, with that being said, provided the ump is consistent with his calls, if he's giving them a high strike, then you don't give him the real low one, or vice versa, or the outside corner, or the inside corner. Just be consistent. To me, it's on the hitters and the pitchers to adjust to that umpire strike zone within the parameters of the rule book, which they all stretch. They always have in the history of the game. But indeed, I am anti-robot, although I think inevitably it will come.
Alrighty. Hey, Bruce, in your opinion, is Jose Ramirez already a top 5 Indians Guardians hitter of all time?
Absolutely. No question, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. No question whatsoever. I think Albert Bell, during that 90s era when we were featuring one of the greatest lineups of all time, was the most feared hitter ever in an Indians lineup. And I think Jose ranks behind him. Yeah, you can go back to the Boudreaux days. It was a totally different era of baseball then, as well as the 54 team, which really featured tremendous pitching. The Indians featured tremendous pitching back then. Even when we made the playoffs and the World Series under Eric Wedge, we didn't have a hitter on that team like a Jose Ramirez. So, yeah, I think Jose is clearly, along with Albert Bell, the 2 greatest hitters ever to put on the uniform.
Alrighty, last one here. Hey, Bruce, what do you think the Guardians' biggest priority should be before the trade deadline this season?
Well, I heard you say a starting pitcher, and I can certainly understand that. But if indeed you do get back Gavin Williams, I wouldn't be surprised. It depends on what transpires between now and the end of this upcoming month of June. If indeed one of these kids doesn't blossom into a complement to Naylor and Jose, then I would think maybe another bat that's got some power might be on the list of exploring for Antonetti and Chernoff. I do believe that's a possibility. You said a starting pitcher. I think that's going to depend on how Gavin Williams performs after he's activated, hopefully sooner rather than later.
Alrighty, that's it for Ask Bruce.
Well, I appreciate all of you watching and hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be back next week with Denny Coots as our special guest and a lot more to cover. Obviously, by then, the NBA championship will be underway. We'll cover that. And we're right around the corner from the U Open. Before you know it, we're going to be talking Browns, OTAs, and all that. And before you know it, it'll be August and the preseason games for the Browns, etc. So plenty on the agenda as we begin the summer months here in Cleveland and the state of Ohio. So glad you joined us on Bonus Time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network. You have a good one. We'll see you next week. I'm Bruce Drennan on behalf of Ryan Smith. Until then, as always, and most importantly, you remember, I love you, Ohio. And I love you, Cleveland.